Imagine you are holding a single stone in the palm of your hand, like right now. It's a rupee.
Right. And not just an ordinary rupee.
No, definitely not. It is valued at 5 billion marks. But here is your immediate reality. Your children are hungry, your city is essentially reduced to rubble, and the person who actually owns this ruby, they're dead.
Wow. And the company you worked for that stored it is just gone, too.
Exactly. It has completely ceased to exist. So what do? I mean, I think most of us, if we're being completely honest, would look at that situation and say, well, survival has to come first. You know,
Well,
you sell the stone, you feed your family, you start over.
yeah, that's just the basic human survival instinct.
But what if holding on to that 5 billion mark, Rudy, and letting that decision cost you absolutely everything in the short term is the exact mechanism that makes your mere name worth 8 billion marks decades later?
It sounds impossible, honestly.
It really does. But welcome to today's Deep Dive. I'm your host, and I'm joined by our resident expert to guide us through this. Our mission today is to dig into this incredibly profound philosophical argument about the tangible hard currency value of honesty.
Yeah, and we're looking at a fascinating essay written by Su Feng in February 2019. It's titled Integrity is the First Wealth of Life, which was translated by Kinyu and edited by Kair.
And to really understand this essay, we are going to look at a staggering historical account from the eve of World War II that basically subjects this entire philosophy to the ultimate stress test. Okay, let's unpack this. Because the author doesn't just launch into the history, right?
No, they don't. They start by building a very specific theoretical framework, which is a really crucial starting point.
Right.
Before we get into the life and death stakes of the story, the text establishes a baseline definition of what integrity actually means here. The author defines it as a simple but honestly demanding equation. It's honesty plus trustworthiness equals integrity.
So it's not just not telling lies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just about telling the truth when someone asks you a direct question. It is the absolute alignment of your internal state and your external actions. Like, it means being the exact same person on the inside as the one making promises on the outside.
And the author makes the case that when a society lacks this alignment, we all end up footing the bill. I was thinking about this, and the best way to visualize it for you, listening right now, is to think of a lack of integrity as a societal friction tax.
Oh, a friction tax. I like that.
Right, because imagine if every single time you went to buy, like, a simple cup of coffee, you had to hire a lawyer to verify the barista wasn't going to clone your credit card.
Right, or bring a chemist to test the milk for poison.
Exactly. Think about the sheer...
It really would.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is explicitly pointing out that exact dynamic. The text states that when people treat each other with sincerity, the cost of communicating and transacting is incredibly low.
Because you don't need all those defensive layers.
Right. Society functions harmoniously. But when people aren't trustworthy, society becomes dangerous, turbulent, and highly inefficient. So the author isn't just speaking in abstract, feel-good terms. They are identifying honesty as a deeply functional tool.
Even though you can't literally eat honesty.
Exactly. The text acknowledges that honesty isn't food. It's not going to put calories in your body. But it profoundly lowers the psychological cost of living. It prevents the constant anxiety, fear, and sorrow that fundamentally stem from a culture of deception.
Which perfectly sets up how the text categorizes what it actually means to be wealthy. Because the author breaks life's wealth down into 3 distinct tiers.
Yeah, this part is fascinating.
Coming in at number 3, which is actually the lowest tier in this philosophy, is material wealth. That's your money, your houses, your cars, the numbers in your bank account.
The stuff most people spend their lives chasing.
Exactly. Then, moving up, the second tier is spiritual wealth. But the absolute peak, the first tier of human value, according to this essay, is the wealth of the soul. And that is where integrity lives.
Right.
But honestly, looking at those top 2 tiers, the distinction between spiritual and soul wealth seems, I don't know, a bit nuanced to me.
It is nuanced, but it's really vital to the author's argument. It's important to distinguish those top 2 tiers clearly. The text suggests that spiritual wealth might encompass things like your intellect, your education, your appreciation for fine art or music.
Okay, so being cultured.
Yeah, those are valuable, sure.
Yeah.
But the soul, the tier 1 wealth, is the absolute foundational bedrock of your character. You can be a highly educated, cultured person who loves Beethoven, meaning you have high tier 2 wealth, but still be someone who lies to their business partners and cheats their neighbors.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and if you do that, you are basically bankrupt in tier 1.
So you can have the intellect without the integrity.
Precisely. And the text makes some incredibly stark, almost uncompromising claims about this hierarchy. The author asserts that a person lacking integrity is profoundly poor, no matter how many mansions they own.
Even if they have all that temporary material wealth.
Right, or build a completely fabricated reputation. The text actually frames the consequences in very severe moral and religious terms. It states that honest people are akin to angels, while those who are dishonest are described as descendants of devils.
Wow, that's intense.
It is. It argues that dishonest individuals sacrifice their serenity and will inevitably pay a high price, if not in this life, then in the next, ultimately being denied entry into heaven.
Okay, and just to pause for a second, be completely transparent with you, the listener. We are simply reporting the author's specific perspective here. We aren't, you know, endorsing or debating these specific religious framings.
Right, exactly. We're just looking at the source.
But you really have to understand the sheer gravitational weight the author places on this concept of the soul to grasp the gravity of the story we are about to explore.
Right.
Because, let's face it is incredibly easy to sit around in a comfortable room during times of peace and talk about the supremacy of the wealth of the soul.
Oh, for sure. It's easy to be an angel when things are good.
Right. It's easy to say integrity is your first wealth when your material wealth is totally fine. But what happens when the fabric of society tears open and the bombs literally start falling?
And that brings us to the transition from philosophical theory to brutal practice. The text introduces an account preserved by someone named Zhang Dozi. It transports us to Berlin, Germany, right on the precipice of World War II.
We find ourselves at a place called the Babina Trust Bank. It's a small, somewhat unassuming firm dedicated to storing high-value items and documents for its wealthy clients.
And as the war breaks out and the reality of the conflict hits the city, absolute panic sets in.
Yeah, you have to picture the visceral chaos of a bank run in a war zone. Customers are rushing the doors, desperately grabbing their valuables so they can flee the city. It's a stampede of self-preservation.
Total chaos.
And the owner-manager of this trust bank, the guy in charge, he takes one look at the crumbling situation, packs up his own valuables, and runs away to save himself.
The leadership just completely collapses. The structural integrity of the business essentially dissolves overnight in the face of this survival panic. The social contract of the workplace just evaporates.
The one employee, a woman named Thea, stays behind. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, it does.
Because Thea isn't just hanging around an empty office. The text says she is sitting in this building and literal bombs are exploding in the vicinity, artillery is falling, and she is acting as if she is deaf to the explosions.
It's hard to even imagine that level of focus.
The building is likely shaking, dust is falling from the ceiling, the city is catching fire outside her window, her boss has completely abandoned her, and she is calmly sitting at her desk clearing the final accounts. Right?
And in doing so, she discovers that one customer, a man named Leg, has not come to claim his stored item. And we aren't talking about a silver candlestick or a stack of bearer bonds here.
No, we are definitely not.
It is a ruby worth 5 billion Deutschmarks.
Which is a staggering, almost incomprehensible concentration of wealth to just be left sitting on a desk in a war zone.
So she is staring at 5 billion marks while the world ends around her. Like, what goes through her mind? She packs the ruby into a small box alongside its custody documents. She grabs the bank's operational accounts, and she finally leaves the building.
And her timing is crucial.
Unbelievably crucial. Because just a few days later, the entire neighborhood around the Babina Trust Bank is razed to the ground by artillery fire. It is turned to ash.
To understand why she did that, you have to look at the psychology of her choice through the lens of that wealth of the soul we discussed earlier. Think about her situation objectively.
The social contract of her employment was functionally dead. The bonds was gone. The building was about to be destroyed. Almost anyone looking at that situation would say her professional obligation ended the exact moment the manager fled out the back door.
I mean, absolutely. Why risk literal explosions for someone else's rock? If the boss is gone and the business is defunct, you are no longer an employee. You are just a civilian trying not to die in a collapsing city.
But for Thea, her identity and her obligations weren't tethered to the physical building or the manager's presence. She felt that she was still an employee of the Babina Trust Bank.
Wow.
She felt she was personally carrying the weight of its institutional credibility. She maintained her internal consistency regardless of the extreme external chaos. The text presents this moment as the ultimate proof of character. She wasn't honest because her boss was watching or because it was easy. She was honest because it was who she fundamentally was.
So she escapes the immediate war zone with the ruby. But surviving the bombings is only the first part of this stress test because the acute adrenaline-fueled danger of the war eventually ends, but then the chronic grinding pain of the aftermath begins.
Yeah, the real test is just starting.
The war is over. Thea returns to a ruined Berlin. She is a single mother with 3 children to take care of. The bank owner who fled, he's dead. The physical bank is a crater. And the wealthy owner of the ruby, Mr. Legg, he also died during the conflict.
So the slate is completely wiped clean. There is no one looking for this stone. There's no institution left to report to. There is no central database flagging it as missing.
Nothing. And Thea falls into extreme poverty. She cannot find a job in the post-war ruins. She and her 3 children are living in absolute destitution year after agonizing year.
Just brutal conditions.
We're talking about rationing meager amounts of food, wearing threadbare clothes, and the entire time, sitting quietly in her possession, is a ruby worth 5 billion marks. The wealth is entirely unclaimed. She could have quietly sold it to a jeweler. She could have moved to a different country and lived like royalty. She could have fed her children a feast every single night, but she never touches it. She views it strictly as customer property, holding it safely for decades.
Decades. It's wild.
It isn't until 1978, more than 30 years after the war ended, that a local government war museum opens, putting out a call for historical relics. Thea, now an old woman, finally walks in and turns over the ruby and the preserved bank accounts.
And the government is obviously shocked. So they do the research. They dive into the archives and actually track down Legg's living grandson, a man named Doyle.
Wow.
When Doyle gets the call and realizes what has happened, he is astounded. He travels to Berlin, gets the family gem back, and out of sheer gratitude, he immediately offers Thea half of the ruby's value upon its eventual sale.
Which, just to do the math here, is half of 5 billion, 2.5 billion marks, handed to her on a silver platter, completely legally.
And she politely declines.
Really, what?
She looks at a billionaire offering her half his fortune, and she tells him she only wants a modest standard storage fee for the years she kept it safe in her home.
Okay, wait, so here's the thing, and I know you listening might be screaming the exact same thing at your speakers right now. It is one thing to be honest. It is a beautiful thing to have personal integrity.
Right.
But it is entirely another thing to let your 3 children live in extreme, grinding poverty when the original owner of the wealth is dead. The wealth is completely unclaimed. Literally no one would have known. So was this really integrity, or was this a rigid, almost fanatical obsession with rules that ultimately caused her family unnecessary suffering?
What's fascinating here is how the source material addresses that exact, deeply uncomfortable tension.
Because it is uncomfortable.
Highly uncomfortable.
Mm.
But the text doesn't view her actions as a betrayal of her family's well-being. It views it as the ultimate triumph of her spirit over material temptation. To Thea, and to the author's philosophical framework, even harboring improper thoughts about the gem's value, let alone selling it, would have instantly bankrupted her wealth of the soul.
I hear what the author is saying about prioritizing the soul, but honestly, that is a terrifying level of discipline to contemplate.
Oh, definitely.
To look your hungry kids in the eye and essentially say, we cannot eat this feast because my internal serenity and my duty to a dead man are more important. It highlights just how extreme, true, uncompromising integrity actually is when put to the test. Like, it's not just a nice corporate buzzword. In this framework, it requires agonizing physical sacrifice.
It does. The text views this extreme adherence to duty as the ultimate proof of character, precisely because it overrides standard biological material survival instincts.
It goes against everything we're wired to do.
Right. If she had rationalized selling it to feed her kids, the author's framework suggests she would have gained material wealth tier 3, but utterly destroyed her tier 1 wealth. She would have introduced that societal friction tax we talked about into her own mind.
Ah, right.
She would have lived with internal guilt, the fear of discovery, the knowledge that she was different on the inside than she presented on the outside. By holding on to it, she remained an angel in the author's terminology, fiercely protecting her serenity and peace of mind, even while her body endured poverty.
It is a staggering level of internal fortitude, but this is exactly where the story takes a turn that almost feels like a paradox. Because she rejected the material value of the ruby for all those years, her actions ended up generating an entirely new, even larger pool of wealth.
Yes, the ultimate delayed return on investment of a truly good name.
The story of what she did in 1978 inevitably hits the newspapers. The public is absolutely floored by her story. She immediately starts getting offers to be the general counsel of the Chamber of Commerce.
Right, everyone wants a piece of that integrity.
Large, prestigious trust companies are knocking on her door, practically begging her to be their honorary president. She turns them all down, stating she's simply too old to take on those roles now. But eventually, Thea passes away. And after her death, several major companies approach her son, Chris.
And to be clear, they don't want to hire Chris for his financial acumen. They want to buy the rights to his mother's name.
They want to name their financial trusts after Thea. Chris can't decide who to go with, so a massive corporate bidding war breaks out among these financial giants. And finally, the Plato Trust Company wins the exclusive right to use her name. The final purchase price, 8 billion Deutschmarks.
Which is 3 billion marks more than the ruby itself was even worth.
So what does this all mean? Think about it like a modern tech company buying IP intellectual property. Usually a massive corporation spends billions of dollars to buy a patent for a revolutionary microchip, or they buy the rights to a globally recognized movie franchise.
Right. Normally, you spend that kind of capital to buy an asset that produces a tangible product for guaranteed ticket sales. But the Plato Trust Company didn't buy a patent or a product. They bought a reputation. They literally monetized moral character.
They bought pure, unadulterated integrity.
And the president of the Plato Trust Company actually had to defend this sky-high purchase price to the bewildered public because people were confused. Like, how can a mere name be worth 8 billion marks?
Right. Sounds insane.
But his response was profound. He said that Thea wasn't just a name anymore. It represented an invincible entrepreneurial spirit. It represented a level of integrity that is demonstrably more valuable than the most precious gems on earth. And the text notes that as soon as they officially rebranded to the Thea Trust Company, their transaction volume soared.
Because people wanted to put their money where Thea's name was. It's incredible that the Plato Trust Company saw such an immediate, massive financial boost just by adopting her legacy. But honestly, that actually points to a much darker reality about the business world.
How so?
Well, why was her name so incredibly valuable to them? Because that level of bedrock trust is extraordinarily rare. And that is exactly the critique the author, Hu Feng, levels at modern society as the essay concludes.
This raises an important question, and it's the exact question the author leaves the reader with. Is it not worthy of everyone's pondering? The author closes the text by zooming out and looking specifically at China's 40 years of economic reforms.
Okay.
And again, to be completely transparent with you, the listener, we are impartially conveying the author's specific critique of these historical economic systems. We aren't taking a political stance.
Right.
But Shui Feng argues that amidst all the massive growth and rapid development over those 4 decades, the fundamental element that remains dangerously absent in officialdom, in business, and in financial circles is that priceless word, integrity.
The author is essentially using Thea's story as a mirror to hold up to the modern economy. And it's a mirror you can hold up to your own industry or your own daily interactions. Like, how much of that friction tax are you paying every day because the systems and companies around you prioritize quick material wealth over the wealth of the soul?
When systems prioritize material wealth tier 3 over the wealth of the soul tier 1, they inevitably invite turbulence. They create a society where the cost of communicating and trusting is prohibitively high, where anxiety and fear dominate basic transactions.
It's just a constant drain.
Exactly. The lack of integrity isn't just framed as a moral failing in this essay. It is diagnosed as a massive economic and societal inefficiency. When trust is gone, it breaks the machine.
It fundamentally breaks the machine. And Thea was someone who absolutely refused to let her internal machine break, even when the literal world around her was exploding.
She really was.
We've covered some incredible ground today. We started with a deep philosophical breakdown of the 3 wealths, learning why the bedrock of the soul must sit above the intellect of the spirit and the comfort of the material.
We walked through the terrifying, ash-choked streets of World War II Berlin as a single abandoned employee refused to break her bond of trust.
We waded through decades of extreme poverty, grappling with the agonizing temptation of a 5 billion mark ruby, and finally arrived at the astonishing 8 billion mark validation of a single woman's character.
It is a profound exploration of what we truly value as a society and the unseen, massive long-term dividends of unyielding internal consistency.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought. It's something that isn't explicitly written in Zhuo Feng's text, but it's been quietly lingering in the background of this whole discussion.
Yeah.
The ultimate financial reward for Thea's integrity, that unbelievable 8 billion mark sale, only happened after she died.
Right. She never saw a penny of it.
Exactly. The wealth went to her son, Chris, and it changed the trajectory of a massive corporation. She lived her entire life in poverty. So if you are truly going to commit to prioritizing the wealth of the soul in your own life, does true integrity mean making peace with the fact that you might never personally cash in on doing the right thing?
That is a tough question to answer.
Are you willing to hold the rock, to endure the friction, knowing the reward might only belong to the name you leave behind? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, keep looking for the underlying mechanics of trust in your own life, and we'll see you next time.